Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the A24 project here on the Nerd Party. On today's episode, alongside the usual A24 hour news and discussion, we're going to be exploring some dark places before taking on the crapshoot that is correctly spelling Mississippi Grind. Mississippi. That's how I always remember it. Is that how you remember it, Lee?
It's the classic, isn't it? I refuse to believe anyone else does anything otherwise.
Exactly. So I'm your co-host, Dallas King, and with me, as always, as you've heard, is the Ryan Reynolds to my Ben Mendelsohn. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
I feel like I got the good draw there, so yeah, I'm happy. I don't know what I've said to get into your good books like that, but I'm gonna take it.
Well, I know I sometimes, do cheeky references to you when doing my comparisons, but I thought I'd give you the good end of stick there. And besides, I think Ben Mendelsohn is great, and I'm sure we're going to wax lyrical about him in the Mississippi Grind and many other films. We actually did it a couple of weeks ago in Slow West as well, so I think we're both happy with our picks on that one. But before we do dive into those films, of course, we always talk about some A24-hour news. Now, on the last episode, there wasn't much news because we'd recorded it a couple of weeks in advance because I was off to India on a holiday. It dropped while I was in India. It's the magic of podcasting. You record these things in advance. And I just have to, at this point, do a shout out to my wife, Lucy, who is still in India. I went for 2 weeks. She went for 2.5 months. So she's still over at the moment. And she said she's going to be listening to us on the podcast in order to hear my voice, which is quite sweet. So hello, Lucy. Hope you're listening and I hope you enjoy this episode, even though I can guarantee we're going to be talking about 2 films which you have never seen. So there you go. But I'm sure there's a few other people as well as Lucy who have not seen some of these films, but if we can sort of get them into the consciousness and send people to watching and checking them out, because I know we have had that with some feedback recently on the podcast with reviews and stuff like that, people saying they're now starting to check out films that they weren't really aware of beforehand. So it's always nice to hear that people are finding these films, and it's great to hear when there's a positive or negative response to them as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's one of these ones. I was discussing it with someone the other day that kind of A24, like I think the movies we're going to discuss today are kind of why we want to do this sort of project. Everyone has discussed Lady Bird, has a think piece on it, an opinion on it. How many times have we read maybe comments on places like Dark Places or kind of Mississippi Grind? And, this has got some of the best talent involved in kind of Hollywood today in terms of writers, cast members, directors. A director of Mississippi Grind has now gone on to make $1 billion movie. So I think kind of exploring these people's early careers and choices can really influence what's to come. And you think of something like Marvel, for example. Someone at Marvel clearly watched Mississippi Grind to go, those are the people we want to make our first female-led superhero movie. And there's maybe something in there that people aren't genuinely seeing. Or if people have gone and watched something like Captain Marvel and they're keen to now dive into someone's back catalogue, then this is a podcast which is going to look at those kind of movies, not just the big superhero ones.
Absolutely. And A24 at this point have not made a superhero movie, but there's clearly something there within these films that is the platform or the catapult that will lead people to that. And I'm slightly disappointed in A24 that they had not released another film before Dark Places, because it would have essentially meant that we would have had Mississippi Grind and Room in one episode, which would have allowed to basically be a Captain Marvel spoiler special again, because you would have had the directors of Captain Marvel and the star of Captain Marvel in the same episode. Sadly, it has not worked out that way, and instead we're going to be looking at Dark Places. But before that, as I mentioned, we always mention some A24-hour news, and it was a little bit light on the last episode, but this episode we have got a lot to talk about. First of all, I'd say this is probably the biggest news to drop in the last few weeks, and it's the fact that Joel Coen is going to be directing a version of Macbeth starring Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth, and I think it's quite fair to say, seeing some of the comments on Twitter, quite controversially casting of Denzel Washington as Macbeth. What do you make of this, Lee?
Talk about a lack of Scottish representation. We've had now this, Outlaw King, even sort of the recent Macbeth film that was brilliant with Michael Fassbender. Once again, no Scottish actors are kind of in these leading roles, but hey, with a Coen brother involved, Francis McDormand and Denzel Washington, I'm immediately got my attention for this. I almost can't picture this at all as some sort of an A24 movie, and like I think everyone was kind of caught a bit surprised by that one. It's going to be interesting for sure. I'm really looking forward to this one. I mean, Macbeth has been kind of done to death, really. There's always the odd exception, but they must have some unique idea that they have if they're wanting to bring this to the screen, both kind of A24 and someone like Joel Cohen. They don't just put out movies for the sake of it. So I'm curious to see what their take is going to be on it. I don't know if it's going to be a historical one or not. I've not read too much up on the news on this one, but I really want to see where they go with this.
Yeah, no, I've had a quick look, and it's got no details really other than the casting and whatever, so there's no hint whether it will be a classic adaptation, as in like the Fassbender one, or if it will be one of these sort of modern day retellings. Like we had 10 Things I Hate About You was The Taming of the Shrew. You had Joss Whedon do a modern day version of Much Ado About Nothing. So I think it could there's potential maybe for a modern day setting. I would like to see a modern day setting. I know someone on Twitter was moaning the fact that there were apparently no black men in Scotland at the time that Macbeth would have happened, especially not being a lord or duke anyway. So that's just people nitpicking whatever way. But when when you get the chance to work with someone like Denzel Washington, of course you're going to take it. And he's had previous in Shakespeare on the screen. He worked with Kenneth Branagh on Othello. So I'm very excited to see this one. And I think Frances McDormand is on a roll at the moment with some. So I think she's going to be fantastic in this. And I'm very excited to see what they do with it. And I hope it's not just a standard retelling of the tale. I hope there's a twist somewhere to put a new spin on this tale as old as time as it would be. But there's another new film coming out. We've got a film called False Positive. Again, not many details on it, but Elena Glazer is writing and starring this, and it's mentioned as a horror film, and she'll be starring alongside Justin Theroux and Pierce Brosnan. So, excited for this one?
Yeah, hell yeah. And Pierce Brosnan, like, he has got... I love Pierce Brosnan. He was my James Bond when I was growing up. And almost in sort of the past few years, he just seems to be getting more respect than ever. Like, he's turned into like this sexy older man with like the best Instagram account out there, and he is just like, I want to see him in more and more movies. So when it was kind of announced that he was going to be starring in a new film, I thought, oh, okay, it's probably going to be one of these sort of straight to DVD or video on demand films he's been kind of in recently, sort of similar to kind of Final Score and such like. And then I heard it was going to be an A24 film, and it was like, okay, right, you've definitely got my attention here. So I'm really excited to see Pierce Brosnan enter this, and like in 2021 or something like that, to discuss his entry into the A24 canon. I'm excited to see what he does next. I think he's the best thing about those Mamma Mia movies. I can't wait to see this film.
Really, is he the best thing about those Mamma Mia movies? Is his singing the best thing?
It's those. Look at that smile. It's the smile though. When you turn around and he's got that big grin on his face every time he's doing anything. He is just like infectious, and I love that kind of energy of him. And I think that he has it in him as well to sort of be, this charismatic person, but he's also got the side of him which can go dark as well. So this film could be a comedy, it could be dark, it could be a horror. Pierce Brosnan has the range. It's just giving him the opportunities, and I want to see what opportunity he gets in this film.
Yeah, I know. I think because he was for a while sort of typecast in the Bond role, and then with the Mamma Mia films and other films such as, I think it was the Love Punch, and there was another one where it was basically, there was a couple of years where it looked like Pierce Brosnan was basically saying yes to scripts that were set on sunny European islands and Bahama Islands. So basically he got a free holiday at the same time as making a film. But there's, if you look back on his back catalogue, there's the times like The Ghost, the Roman Polanski film, Taylor of Panama, you had also Thomas Crown Affair, where he has got just sort of great charisma. Even though the sort of The World's End, his small role in that, he has got another side to him, and it's going to be great to see sort of what he can bring to that. And combined with the likes of Justin Theroux, who has he's been on great form recently, just playing utter insidious creeps in the likes of Mute and in the Maniac TV series on Netflix as well. He's always an actor who brings something different to every single role that he does, so I'm very excited to see what comes with this. I mean, we have no real plot details, we have no idea what the kind of horror it is, but I mean, false positive could, I guess, be a bit of a hint, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and I'm happy to wait and see and be surprised with what they bring to this one. So next on the news list it's just a tiny little tidbit of news, but we've had Ari Aster has given us a bit of detail on Midsummer. I say a bit of detail. He's given us a quote for the posters and basically calling it a Wizard of Oz for perverts. So what do you make of this, Lee? Does this, can it possibly make it any more anticipated for you, or does this make you question you wanting to see this? Because I mean, Wizard of Oz is pretty weird anyway, but then you add in for perverts, and then I have no idea what to expect.
I have no idea what to expect, and I love that he's come out with this one comment, this film is an absolute mystery to everyone. The trailer poses more questions than answers. We know so little about the plot, for example, and it's just he's just sat there thinking, right, I've got to give something. What am I going to do? I could, give a little bit away. I could have a bit of a mystery here. Now I'm just going to come out with this comment and it's just absolutely, it grabs your attention as well. It's just little things like that where you think, that is brilliant marketing, whether intended or not, and that's got my attention. And you can almost see something like that making it into every review and think piece that's going to be written about this movie. And yeah, it adds to my curiosity and excitement for this movie. It's going to be one of the most anticipated films of the year.
Absolutely is. Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained said, "You had my curiosity, now you have my attention." And the attention now goes to trailers, and we had a couple of trailers drop in the last couple of weeks. A short trailer for Euphoria, which is actually going to be a combination of A24 and HBO, and this is a TV series which looks at the life of a group of high school students as they grapple with drugs, sex, and violence. So essentially, to me, it sounds like an American version of Skins. What did you make of this one, Lee?
Yeah, I think it looks really cool. The actress, her name's forgetting. I'm going to butcher her name. Zendaya. I just think she looks really cool in this as well. So yeah, she's one of the best sort of upcoming kind of talents in Hollywood at the moment. So yeah, I really want to see this movie. I like the kind of little synopsis for it. I think it's got a really good mood trailer. Yeah, I want to see this one.
Yeah, no, sort of looking through the cast, she's the only sort of one that I kind of recognise. So, but I mean, she's really good in the Spider-Man films. Great in the Greatest Showman, and of course, she's part of Denis Villeneuve's greatest cast of all time and largest cast of all time for Dune. So yeah, excited to see this one. And the other trailer that dropped was for the Sundance Award winning The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I didn't know much about this until seeing the trailer. I didn't really know what it was about, but basically it's a sort of slightly semi-autobiographical tale. And yeah, this looks really good and sort of falling into, I think, sort of somewhere in between that sort of Moonlight, If Beale Street Could Talk sort of vibe. And I think A24 called it this is our kind of summer blockbuster, so they've really got high hopes for this one, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's the sort of trailer you watch and you think, oh, this is going to be a film that's going to come out sort of in award season. And kind of A24 do have a bit of form with kind of releasing sort of films like this in kind of the summertime, giving people sort of that alternative programming and choice. And I think that's the kind of exciting thing about this, is that we can get high quality films like this in amongst the Avengers and Shazams and whatever other films are coming out in the summer. And I think that's what people look for. You want a balanced diet sometimes in the summer, and I think this film is going to offer that.
Yeah, and back in the day, releasing a film in summer, was basically, it could ruin your Oscar chances. Very few films managed to sustain that sort of thing, but maybe this one did, because we just have to look at Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. It was released around April, May time, and it ended up getting about 10 Oscar nominations. Sadly, it did not win, even though I think it should have that year. But I think we'll probably see this around, certainly around the Independent Spirit Awards. But I think high hopes for this one as well. And our final bit of news, very niche, time-limited news, but if any UK listeners are listening to the A24 project right now on the day that it dropped, Monday the 8th of April, you can pause, head down to your local Cineworld for a preview of 8th Grade, and I know that this is exciting news for you, Lee.
I'm so happy. Like when I think you had messaged me, like I had a theory that it was going to be a Cineworld a release kind of preview, and when I noticed like you had tagged me in it on Twitter, I was like, here we go, and it was like, usually we record our podcasts on kind of like a Monday evening, something kind of time, and I would like just remembered messaging you guys going, I'm sorry, like I cannot do Monday evening. It's gonna have to be either like early Monday kind of night, or it's gonna be Tuesday. Like I haven't got to see this film. I would have killed myself if I had another jinx. So I will finally see the film next week, and I cannot wait to it's gonna be a buzz.
This is where we find out in the next episode that there was a problem with the DCP at the cinema, and that basically the screening got cancelled. And then Lee never speaks to anyone again on the fact that, because I know that, well, actually, no, you will be able to see it on opening day on the 26th, because I know you've just booked your tickets for Avengers Endgame for the midnight screening on the 24th. So leaving that Friday night open for 8th Grade. Of course, that is, if any cinema is actually screening it, and they haven't given all 10, 12 screens to Avengers Endgame. So, but, they must have been confident that they can get a few screens in on release, given that it's good. They decided to book it in against Avengers Endgame. But again, that's that sort of counter program we're talking about. Not everyone wants to see, not everyone has followed 21 previous Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and wants to find out what happens. People want to see something else. So hopefully, there is an audience for 8th Grade, and we'll find it, because, even though it's set in, an American sort of middle school, I think, the challenges that Elsie Fisher's character faces are pretty universal. And although the technologies may be more advanced than what we had back at school, I think everyone can sympathise with what she's going through. And I'm not going to say any more, because I realise I'd be talking about spoilers, and I keep forgetting that you haven't seen it yet. So yeah, but we can talk about it finally on the next episode, so that's good.
The last person in Edinburgh that hasn't seen it.
Oh, you poor thing. But trust me, it is worth the wait. Of course, I hope that. Imagine you actually see it and don't like it. I mean, that would just be the most awkward conversation ever.
Exactly.
But 8th Grade will be discussed fully on a future episode of the A24 project, way off into the future, around about episode 40. But we're on episode 14 at the moment. And our first film this week is Dark Places, written and directed by Giles Pakwa-Brenner. It's based on the novel by Gillian Flynn, who famously wrote Gone Girls and Sharp Objects, as well as writing the screenplay for Widows, which was directed by Steve McQueen this year. And the film stars Charlize Theron, Nicholas Hoult, Christina Hendricks, Corey Stoll, Ty Sheridan, and Chloë Grace Moretz. As the sole survivor of a home invasion that witnessed the death of her mother and sisters, Libby Day lives with the knowledge that her testimony as a 7-year-old sentenced her brother Ben to life in prison. 25 years later, Libby meets Lyle, the head of a group of true crime enthusiasts, the Kill Club, who convince her to re-examine the events of that night. As new memories and old suspects flood back into her life, Libby begins to question her own testimony and sets out to discover the truth of her tragic past. Who did murder the Day family? Now, Lee, were you aware of this film before the A24 project? Had you seen it before? Was this the first time viewing? And what did you make of it?
Yeah, this was a brand new film for me to see, and I wasn't really at all familiar with it. I don't think I ever had the chance to maybe see it at the cinema, and kind of this was one I was sort of had been looking forward to a little bit in the back of my mind, where I knew this was coming up. It was, based on a book by Gillian Flynn, who had done Gone Girl, which I've not read the book, but I love David Fincher's adaptation. Charlize Theron, Christina Hendricks, Nicholas Hoult, Chloë Grace Moretz, like that is a box office cast in my opinion. It follows like Theron and Hoult are back together again after Mad Max Fury Road, and I kind of like the sound of something like this, but in reality it was just such a bore, and I was like, I should have kind of seen this one coming, that this had such a great cast, great talent connected to it, but no one had ever sort of talked about it or raved about it. And you think like this film just seems to have just been a bit of a kind of real failure probably. And I think I've never seen it available to buy. I think you can just rent it or maybe even stream it some places, but it just was a film that really disappointed me, and I think it could have been a really interesting kind of story to watch, but yeah, it was just one that I thought was such a waste of the talent.
I have to agree with you, to be honest. I had not seen the film before. I was kind of aware of it in the back of my mind, but it was never one that I'd rushed out to go and see. I'd never really heard anything about it. I borrowed it from my local library, and it actually had a copy. And on the cover, alarm bells start to ring when the only quote on the front of the DVD cover is "A fantastic follow-up to Gone Girl, 5 stars." Says "In Style Magazine." Now, clearly, one of the heavy hitters that you listen to for opinions on film. It's not your Empires or your Sight and Sounds. It's In Style Magazine. So alarm bells rang at that point, and I have to say I agree with you. It was just a really boring story, which is surprising given, like you say, I absolutely adored Gone Girl. I haven't read the book, but I know it's the way that she structured that book is. It's sort of done chapter about from the point of the female character and the male character in that relationship. But I thought David Fincher's version was fantastic. This feels like it was commissioned and produced all very quickly based on the success of Gone Girl, and they wanted to try and replicate that. And it just sort of failed. The problem is that the story was just, like you say, very dull and boring. And when you get to the situation where you're not really caring whether or not if the brother did do it or not, and actually you don't really care to find out who actually committed the murders, that's a problem with something like this. And I've got some theories. I mean, the cast, it feels like a wasted cast when you've got talent like Theron and even like sort of Corey Stoll in a small role, and even a sort of Ty Sheridan. This was before, probably around that sort of time with Mud and stuff like that. These are all great actors, but they don't really have anything to do with, Charlize Theron is meant to be a sort of haunted, embittered person, but you kind of only know that because she occasionally drinks and stuff like this, and you don't really get the true sense of the horror that she's been through. And what I think is the problem with the film, and I think the film came out too early. I think because there's the Kill Club with these sort of group of true crime experts who basically go into unsolved cases or sort of cases where they want to try and get the verdict overturned. And they sort of come to Libby and ask her to basically work with them to try and do this because the brother has got like 3 weeks before his case will be shut off forever and he will not be allowed to appeal. And this came out in 2016. If this film had come out in 2018, on the back of Making of a Murderer and, Netflix obsession with true crime and stuff like that, I think there was potential to find a better audience for this film. If Netflix had taken it on, I think it could have done better.
I definitely think that's quite a sound theory because, like, you watch it and, like, the idea of this sort of true crime podcast, and it's our second podcast sort of based A24 movie today. Like, you think, oh, like, there's definitely something here where if it could find the right audience, it would really bang. But, like, even when I was watching that sort of, I watch some of these true crime things, or here and there, but I'm not kind of necessarily into it. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, would that kind of audience enjoy something like this? Does it stand out from any of the sort of more, you think of something like Abducted in Plain Sight? Like, I was at like a training session a couple of weeks ago, and like this film came out the same weekend as the Fire documentary. People are like raving about it, talking about it still all these months later, going, hey, have you seen this? Oh my god, like, what was that all about? And like, I can't, there's nothing really here that I think gets under your kind of skin where you think, oh, this could be an interesting mystery, or you could invest in something like that. That I think when you think of all the true crime podcasts, movies, TV series, bloody hell, like the Making a Murderer people or whatever are doing like tours of the Usher Hall and stuff like that. Would this sort of even get into people's radar? I don't think so, and I just think a lot of people could maybe switch off quite early.
Yeah, no, I think what I would propose is, if it was me making this film, I would almost basically rewrite the entire film to be from the perspective of Nicholas Holt's character and the Kill Club. That, for me, was where there was potential. I was really disappointed that they introduced this whole group of people obsessed with wanting to get this guy out of jail, similar to, off the back of the Making of the Murderer things. There was so many people, wanting to work on Stephen Avery's case. They felt that, they were coming up with theories. They were trying to get evidence and stuff like this. That was, for me, where the interesting part of the movie led. But they never went back to that group. If it had been basically them going to Charlize Theron's character and bringing her into the story that way, I almost think that would have made for a more interesting movie and a more marketable movie in the last couple of years with this obsession with true crime. I think I don't know how the book is laid out and whatever, but there was just nothing really sympathetic or particularly interesting about Libby Day's character, and which is bizarre given the fact that Charlize Theron is playing this person, and she is fantastic in the likes of, Mad Max Fury Road, even the sort of young adults. Tully from last year as well. She's a magnificent actress, one of the best actresses in the world today, but this just felt like a nothing role for her and didn't really give her anything to work with.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is such a waste of a brilliant talent, and that's probably the biggest disappointment. And even she kind of seems a little bit bored in this, that, we've got this person that's resistant to getting involved in this case and working with sort of Nicholas Holt's character, and, like, who can blame her? Like, you feel like in the audience member, if our lead character isn't interested, then why should I be?
Yeah, no, it's like, I don't care if my brother rots in jail or not. It's like, okay, great. So, where's the impetus? Where is the drive for moving the plot forward? It's, it's coming from the Kill Club, but they're not actually actively involved in and even Nicholas Holt's character isn't really used much, apart from turning up to give Charlize Theron's character $500 every now and again because she needs to get her car out of the shop and stuff like that. There's it just was a dull bore. And even when, did you see the twist coming and how the murders came about? Did you see that? I kind of guessed it when the mum met the person in the playground after dark or whatever, but there wasn't really anything particularly. They kept talking about this sort of sexual abuse and satanic acts that these kids apparently were doing, but you never really saw any of that in the flashback, and it was just like, I just don't care. And that was my just didn't care.
It promises exciting things, and you can see why. Like, it made only 3.5 million at the box office from a 20 million budget. Like, this was just, a real disappointment, and I don't think anyone is going to seek out this film or watch it based on our review, or I don't see the audience for this. I think it was a real disappointment. I think maybe there's an audience for Gillian Flynn completists who've enjoyed. I haven't seen Sharp Objects. From what I gather, it's very good. I mean, it's got Amy Adams in it, so I'm always excited to see what she does. So I will probably watch that at some point. But other than that, I don't know what the appeal is in for this, because like you say, there's not really anything for true crime fans, because it's it's a novel, it's fiction. But even, I mean, if you want to see someone investigating a true crime, then I would just go, again, David Fincher, I would go to Zodiac. I mean, that for me is one of the best films of the last sort of 15 years. I would watch that. I mean, but then, one other thing about this film being called Dark Places is I felt that the cinematography and the lighting was just, everything looked like it was just so dark and shrouded in, it's like, I almost felt like I needed to turn up the brightness on my telly to actually see what was going on. I thought it was poorly shot and poorly lit. It was just so dark and dull. It just, just turned me off completely. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Watch Zodiac instead, and it did look ugly. This was, for a film that talks about satanic cults and, family affairs and these sorts of things, like, this is just a dull film. It looks awful, and it is just not worth your time at all. Just don't bother.
Yeah, so let's move on to something that is hopefully better received by the both of us. Hopefully it is a jackpot and not a crapshoot or rolling snake eyes on this, but it is Mississippi Grind, and this is written and directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, and as mentioned before, they are the double team behind the, I think it's now crossed $1 billion, like you say, Captain Marvel, but also were the team behind Half Nelson, starring Ryan Nelson. Gosling, not Nelson. Half Nelson, Ryan Gosling. Yep, that's the one. And Mississippi Grind stars Ben Mendelsohn and Ryan Reynolds, and sees Jerry, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who is down in his luck and facing financial hardship, but he teams up with a younger, charismatic poker player, Curtis, unsurprisingly played by Ryan Reynolds, and it's an attempt to change his luck. The two set off on a road trip through the South with visions of winning back what has been lost, both literally and metaphorically, of course. So, Lee, had you seen this one before? What did you know about Mississippi Grind going in to this podcast?
Not too much, to be honest. I had tried to watch this movie a few years ago. It was actually heavily advertised, sort of poster-wise, at my local kind of multiplex at the time, but it never stuck around long, so I kind of missed out on it. And, you know, I liked Ryan Reynolds. Ben Mendelsohn, at the kind of time, I really loved, was it Animal House? Or Animal Factory, I can't remember the name.
Animal Kingdom.
Animal Kingdom, third time lucky.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed those movies, so I was quite keen to see it, but I never kind of got around to it. I remember the first time I tried to watch it, I think I had it sort of torrented or downloaded, and I was watching it kind of on a train journey home. But like the quality wasn't so great. The light was kind of coming in from the train, and I just wasn't able to get a good view of it on my iPad, so I never bothered, and that was the end of the film after about 10 minutes. So I kind of was curious to dive into this one. You know, I'd sort of no real great kind of high hopes for this one. I was kind of curious going into something like Captain Marvel to see how this film potentially got them the job. And I came away really, really liking this film a hell of a lot. And I think what I liked most about it was, you know, the performances are great, but it's a movie that really gets under your skin. You know, you've got these gamblers that are just, you know, spending money, that are making really poor decisions when they should walk away. And it makes you feel anxious. You want to shout at the screen. You're wanting to tell these characters, just walk away now. You've got the money. You can clear your debts. You're in a good position. But they go for that one extra hand. And I like when you get that kind of character where you feel such pity for them, but you can feel that anger as well, like questioning their decisions. You're being wound up by watching the film. And I think that's something that can be really hard to do sometimes in films, that we're so used to enjoying films, getting a laugh from something, getting adventure, being a bit scared, but being pissed off in a positive way is something that's really quite rare. And I thought this film was a real treat for making me feel that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I went to Vegas once on a stag do, and, you know, I've seen firsthand people sort of, you know, gambling away, and, you know, I took a bit of money over, I did a bit of gambling on sort of roulette and stuff like that, and it's like, it's knowing, you know, you go in, yeah, absolutely, you go in with a fixed thing in your head, I'm only going to gamble with this amount, and then, you know, you lose a bit, and then you win a bit, and then it's like, okay, maybe I'll only gamble with what I've won, but then you do get sucked into one more hand. You think, just the next hand, everything will turn around in the next hand, and that's exactly what Ben Mendelsohn's character has got here. You know, he thinks just one more hand will be able to change it, because, you know, he's got alimony payments. You know, he's not doing well. You know, he's got debts all over the place. He needs to get money, and he's just doing a really bad job of gambling at that point. And then, you know, he meets Ryan Reynolds at a game one night, and his luck turns around and he thinks he's found his lucky charm. But for me, I was always wondering if there was something else going on, and if, you know, Ryan Reynolds' character was sort of was grifting him at this point and was doing like a long con or something. There was almost a sort of, it felt at times like, you know, there's obvious sort of Rain Man sort of parallels there with the two people sort of going on a gambling trip or whatever, but also I sort of felt there was maybe something along the lines of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Michael Caine and Steve Martin, about the relationship between the two and how they're maybe not always telling each other the truth, and are they actually playing each other. And you can see that as the way goes on, that they sometimes aren't entirely truthful to each other, and you're not entirely sure their motives, especially towards the end with what I was gearing up to being the train spotting ending. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but if you've seen the ending of Train Spotting and you watch Mississippi Grind, you can kind of see where you think it's going to go. But what I did like about Mississippi Grind is I really like the way that it didn't always deal you the hand that you thought you were going to get. because it could have gone very predictably. Anyone who's ever seen sort of films about gambling and stuff like that will basically think they know exactly how this film's going to play out, but it doesn't always take the easy way out, and I kind of liked that, and I thought that the film basically is really good. I really enjoyed it. Like you, I was aware of it, but I never got round to seeing it, and then like you, I wanted to see it before Captain Marvel came out to see what that, and I can understand why Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck went to Ben Mendelsohn for the choice of Talos as the lead villain in that, because he's just fantastic. I mean, he's been stealing the show for me ever since, like you say, Animal Kingdom. He was just magnificent in, and then slowly getting into sort of small roles in Hollywood movies like The Place Beyond the Pines. You had Killing Me Softly, and then he's sort of become the standard rent-a-villain for Hollywood blockbusters between sort of Rogue One, Ready Player One. He had a small role in The Dark Knight Rises as well, but now in the Marvel movie, he's got pretty much everything on. If he'd been around 5 years early, if he'd been in like a Lord of the Rings and a Harry Potter, he would have had it all sewn up, I think. So
Yeah, he is so good, and I just think it's hard to play kind of roles like this, that someone is so pathetic and down on their luck. Like, we've seen these all kind of before, but Ben Mendelsohn is just one of these kind of great actors, and it's great to see him sort of in these sort of leading roles, and even something like a Marvel movie. You're like, this guy is just great, and I like when kind of talent like that, whether it's Ben Mendelsohn or Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, that I know there's criticism of kind of Marvel and DC or whoever kind of scooping up the indie talent to basically go make their movies, but I like that these people are watching these kind of movies or seeking them out, that it's not just sort of jobs for the boys, it's people that like this that have shown something in a movie like this. Taika Waititi the same. They have not made films that are big blockbuster movies where it's like, your next step up is something similar. They have made brilliant independent movies that have something in it, great use of actors, and then they go, you're the person for the job, and that gives me a lot of hope that the people, that the powers that be, are watching these kind of movies. I just wish that they would leave some space for these kind of movies to thrive a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess there is the hope that, based on the success of Captain Marvel, that people will actively now seek out the back catalogue of these writer-directors. And although, you're watching a film like this, which feels sort of very sort of 70s, as a sort of late 70s vibe, sort of counterculture vibe of, not a lot happens, there's no real action. It's just basically a relationship between these two guys. And yeah, you do sort of wonder exactly what it was that they saw in this that to basically give them Captain Marvel, because the female representation in this film is not the best, I have to be honest. There wasn't much to the female characters beyond, I mean, you had an ex-wife, you had a potential love interest for Ben Mendelsohn, which didn't work out, and then you've got sort of Ryan Reynolds' relationship with Sienna Miller's, once again, a hooker with a heart of gold, unsurprisingly, one of those common cliches in cinema. So you did wonder, I didn't think the female representation was all that great in the film, and it did sort of make me wonder what it was, how they managed to get the job given on that. What did you think of the female characters in this?
Yeah, they're not really kind of great. They're people that just sort of drip in for sort of scenes to push the male kind of characters forward, or to make us look at them as perhaps a bit more pathetic. And they're not really very memorable. I mean, Alfred Woodard is a great talent. Sienna Miller, I wish they had been given a bit more to kind of do here, but ultimately this is kind of Ryan Reynolds and Ben Mendelsohn's movie, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, to focus on Jerry and Curtis. But again, I wouldn't have looked at this movie and went, hey, these are the people to kind of push this forward for our kind of first female empowered superhero adventure. But there's certainly something here where you can tell that they're great with actors. They've taken a kind of genre that is very quite tired and boring and very predictable. Like, as you said, you're sort of thinking about, oh, this might happen. Those things really kind of happen here. Things play out quite nicely, and I think that's something that maybe attracted them, like how they kind of play with a tired genre. But otherwise, I'm just not too sure. I'd love to hear from Kevin Feige or something one day.
Yeah, no, but I mean, we've talked about Ben Mendelsohn, but I think Ryan Reynolds is also very good in this film. He is an actor that sometimes, I think for a lot of people, he's sort of pigeonholed into this sort of comedic actor who's more known for his social media than and Deadpool than the rest. But I think he has got hidden depths. Buried for me is one of his best performances. I thought that film was utterly fantastic. It's basically just him in a coffin the entire time, but he holds the screen and he really showed me a different side to him. Whereas up to that point, I think it was basically sort of, your Van Wilders, your sort of Just Friends and stuff like that, and the proposals and stuff like that. And he really showed something else here. And I thought he was great in this. He was utterly charismatic, but also had a bit of a darker edge to him as well. And I thought the two of them just played off terrifically together. And I would be happy to watch the two of them in any other movie as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to see a bit more of kind of Ben Mendelsohn hopefully in the future again. But yeah, this was a really pleasant surprise. This was kind of the highlight of the week for me.
Absolutely, yeah. This was something which, I didn't have high hopes for. I wasn't too familiar with, but it's turned out to be, a really sort of genuinely pleasing find that I would not have. I mean, obviously Captain Marvel maybe will watch it, but if it wasn't for Captain Marvel, the A24 project has brought me this film as well, and I'm really delighted that I managed to see it because it's something which I would have not potentially missed otherwise, and I think it's great that we've managed to catch this one and hopefully turn a few more people onto it as well.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to the end of this episode of A24. As mentioned, next week we are going to be looking at the star of Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, in the Oscar-winning role in Room, along with Mojave, which stars, I think, possibly our most frequently starring actor in the A24 project, Oscar Isaac, who once again returns to us. But in the meantime, before the next episode, if people want to talk about Mississippi Grind or any of the other A24 project films, where would they be able to find you, Lee?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo, and you can find us on our other podcast, The Filibuster, which is also on the Nerd Party.
Cool. And you can catch me on Twitter at ChampCelluloid, and like you say, catch us on the Nerd Party, along with other great film podcasts such as Missing Frames, Nerd Nuptial, Aggressive Negotiations, City Alpha 3, and Punch It. So until next time, have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.